Here's an example of a Venn diagram that shows what's known as a floating X, and it's also an example of an argument that would be invalid. Like all categorical syllogisms, it consists of three parts, two premises and one conclusion. It's a categorical syllogism in standard form because all the claims are in standard form. Now, as always, when doing Venn diagrams, what you have to determine first is, of course, your premises. Here's premise 1, there's premise 2, and then, of course, your conclusion, which is here. You also have to determine what your terms are. As you can see, the diagram has three circles, S circle, A circle, and M circle, and you have to decide which term corresponds to which letter. And this is determined in the following manner. Assuming the argument has been translated properly, this one, of course, has, the conclusion gives you the S term and the P term. The subject term of your conclusion is your S term. The predicate term of your conclusion is your P term. So in this case, the S term is Democrats, and the P term is Socialist. The term that occurs in both premises, but not the conclusion, is the middle term. In this case, liberals is the middle term. Now, in testing the argument for validity, the following steps are taken. Step 1, diagram premise 1. In this case, it's an all claim, right? So it's an A claim, all Democrats are liberals. And so in this case, what we do is we fill in or shade. And so we have all Democrats are liberals, which is all S, R, M. And so what we have to do is shade it so that all the S's are also M. So we shade here, and of course, the question arises, do we shade here? Well, if we didn't, we'd be saying that all S's are M, except of course that those are also P. But we don't have that, and so we shade this in. So in shading in with all or no, you always shade in the whole part of the circle. So in this case, you get what's called the fat crescent, or cookie with a bite out of it, however you want to call it, or just the circle shading is and all. Step 2, shade premise number 2, which is some socialists are liberals. Socialists, of course, is the P term, and the liberals is the middle term, so you have some P, R, M. And so in order to diagram this, what we'd have to do is place an X, because sum is an X, and to say that sum P, R, M would have to show that we have an X possibly here, because that would be something that is both P and M, but of course it could be here, which would be a claim that is P and also M. We can't decide where it could go because it could be in either place. If we placed it here, we'd be saying some P or M, and those are also, and that is also not S. But that goes beyond what we've got in our premise. If we put it here, we'd be saying some P or M, and they're also S, which also goes beyond what we have in our premise. So what we have to do is what's called floating the X. So put X there, and then to sort of float it, we'll place another X close by, like that, so, and then to indicate floatiness, draw a little line across there. And so we end up with all Democrats are liberals being diagrammed this way, all S or M, and then we diagram the some socialists are liberals, namely some P or M, this way, and then we try to look and see if we can read our conclusion off the diagram. Looking at it, we see that we have potentially some S, R, P, but maybe not. Could be one here, could be there, but in order to be valid, the argument is to give us the conclusion definitely. It would have to be an X sitting right there. Could be one, but perhaps not. And so the argument turns out to be not valid, but rather, of course, invalid. So the argument fails the test. Oops, and I failed my spelling. And we end up with an invalid argument. So that is an example of an invalid categorical syllogism, and also example of the X remaining floating. As a general rule, whenever you see the floating X, the argument will be invalid. Now, it can also be invalid without a floating X, but the floating X is a pretty sure sign.